We're continuing on with section 9, but we're going to talk about tissue perfusion to specific tissues or organs. So we've talked about skeletal muscle. It's really dynamic when it comes to blood flow. So at rest, blood flow is pretty steady at about 1 liter per minute, and it's going to be controlled mostly by myogenic and neural inputs. But once you start exercising, your blood flow is going to increase substantially, and this is what we refer to as active hyperemia, and it's driven by the metabolic needs of the skeletal muscle tissue itself. So local controls can actually override that sympathetic vasoconstriction, which means that the flow to the working muscles can actually increase by 10 times or more. So when it comes to the brain, we have to keep blood flow steady. We're not trying to alter blood flow to our brain like we did with our skeletal muscles. And the reason why is because neurons are very sensitive to oxygen loss. So we want to make sure that the brain is consistently receiving about 750 milliliters per minute of blood. And we're going to use both metabolic and myogenic controls to help keep this steady, so that if our carbon dioxide increases or our pH drops, that will cause our cerebral vessels to dilate, allowing more oxygen to come in and allowing us to get rid of the excess waste products. But if we have too much carbon dioxide, that can actually depress these mechanisms. So if the blood pressure gets too low, for example, our mean arterial pressure drops below 60 milliliters of mercury, it can actually lead to syncope or fainting. If our pressure gets too high, where the mean arterial pressure is greater than 160 millimeters of mercury, you can actually risk cerebral edema or brain swelling. Okay, blood flow through the skin does more than just supply nutrients. It really also plays a big role in body temperature regulation, which you learned about in A&P1, and it's also going to serve as a blood reservoir. So these functions are going to be mostly controlled by sympathetic reflexes that are going to be triggered by different temperature receptors that we have, along with our central nervous system. So when it's really hot outside, our hypothalamus can lower the sympathetic tone, which is going to cause our blood vessels to dilate so that the heat can actually leave the body. The pulmonary circuit, again, just as a reminder, this was a very low resistance circuit where the blood vessels had very thin walls and really large lumens. And the pressure in the pulmonary circuit is much lower than that of the systemic circuit, where it's only at about 24/10 millimeters of mercury compared to the 120/80 millimeters of mercury for your systemic circulation. So why? Well, our low oxygen levels are actually going to cause vasoconstriction, not dilation like in the rest of our body. So we want to make sure that the blood gets rerouted to the parts of the lung that are actually rich in oxygen. So it's a very efficient process, even though it may seem unusual. So finally, we're at the heart, which is an organ that basically feeds itself when it's not working. So during systole, the ventricles are contracting and the coronary arteries are actually compressed. So we have no blood flowing through them while they're actually contracting. So the heart at this time is going to survive off of stored oxygen that's being held in the form of myoglobin. Then during relaxation or diastole, the high aortic pressure is actually going to force the blood through the coronary vessels as well. And when you're exercising, the coronary vessels are actually going to dilate to help keep up with your heart's metabolic demand. So the cardiac muscle tissue uses about 65% of the oxygen being delivered. So most cells only use about 1/4. So the way we get more oxygen is to increase the coronary blood flow, which can actually go up 3 to 4 times during intense activity. So again, just kind of trying to recap everything. Blood flow is constantly shifting and adapting based on your body's needs. whether you're sleeping or running a marathon or outside and it's freezing cold. Your cardiovascular system is making sure that every tissue in your body gets exactly what it needs. And it's a really delicate balance, but it's really essential in helping make sure that we keep all of our tissues and organs alive and active, and that we're capable to respond to our environment.